What will it take to make India an international standard logistics hub and one that is ranked amongst the top 25 globally? Why is it important for India to bring down its logistics costs to single digits? And how do the national logistics policy and the Gati Shakti plan fit into this objective? Welcome to TOI Business Bytes, as Jagannarayan Padmanabhan of CRISIL talks about India's ambitious logistics plans, the achievements, and the challenges ahead. Hi Jagan, welcome to the show. India is actually looking to reduce its logistics cost to single digits, and it also wants to be among the top 25 globally in terms of being a logistics hub. And some
Right.
progress has been made in that direction with the latest World Bank rankings that came out earlier this year. But what
Right.
more needs to be done? What do we really need to be there?
It's a very pertinent question that you asked in terms of the logistics part of it. As you know, many of you would be aware, today's India's logistics cost is currently at about close to 13 to 14% of the GDP.
Right.
And if you were to compare it with respect to the neighboring countries and also leave alone the best of the world, there's a lot of headroom for improvement. That we have jumped significantly in the logistics performance index that is done by the World Bank, and we are currently at the 38th position, and we aim to be in the top 25 by the year 2030. So some of the clear call-outs that needs to be done in terms of for us to reach there, and not just moving in terms of the rank, but is also can get reflected in the reduction of the logistics cost, is the investment in the improving the infrastructure. So what it means is it includes the roads, railways, ports, airports, warehouses, and so on and so forth. So this is the hard infrastructure that we are talking about. So investments there needs to really be stepped up. While we have done significantly good in the last 4 to 5 years in the roads part of it, and the last couple of years in the railways, similar level of investments needs to be happening in the ports and the airports also. The second is in terms of the promote multimodal transportation. So today, if you take the split which happens in India, we have close to about 60% which happens in road, and about 25 to 30% which is in the rail, and the rest is in inland water and the aviation part of it. This needs to change significantly and also have an interlinkages between the two. That is either a road and the rail part of it, or water and road. Such level of multimodal transportation is something which is essential. To put it into context, if we were to look at other developed countries or where there is a logistics efficiency is there, the share of the rail or the water transportation, depending upon the case that we are talking about, will be upwards of 50%, and road would be lesser than 30% or there and thereabout. So that's the differentiation that we need to bring in over the next probably 15 odd years. So this can't happen overnight, but it'll take about a decade to reach there. Then now moving into the softer aspects of it, or the ones which is more micro in nature, is to digitize the whole logistics sector. The use of technology is still very rudimentary in its nature in India, and more so because it is completely disintegrated in terms of its reach. So the technology aspect is not fully embedded upon by people. Then moving on to the other aspects will be the skills and of the logistics professionals needs to be really upended. Today, it is not, there is actually very less course curriculum, even if you were to look at it. And then the last but not the least is a favorable policy environment in the overall scheme of things, more so in terms of the exempt cargo. So I think these are the plethora of things that needs to be done to kind of reach what we are setting out in terms of getting into the top 25.
Right. So, Jagan, lastly, you spoke about policy measures. So, taking that forward, where do you see the national logistics policy and the Gati Shakti National Master Plan fitting into this?
See, in the national logistics policy, if you were to look at it, the key, and some of it may be repetitive in nature, they're also talking about the whole infrastructure part of it, the technology part of it, the skills development, and all of this which is there. The NLP envisages that we bring reducing the logistics cost to about 8% of GDP by 2030, It also has kind of talks about the LPI to be brought into the top 25. All of this is part of the overall aspects of the NLP. While in its policy framework, it's comprehensive in nature. What is important is that how are we able to implement this? I think that is where the differentiation will be happening. There is a lot of impetus in the technology part of it. There is also a national logistics information system which is being proposed and getting implemented, which will help in the improve the flow of information in the logistics sector, the buyer, the seller, the intermediary, all coming in one particular platform. There's also talk about the whole blockchain, artificial intelligence, and big data. So all of this needs to be, so it's a journey. The starting point has happened.
Okay, but Jagan, in terms of sectors, which are the sectors that if one were to focus on can bring in quick efficiencies, and which are the ones that actually require long-term planning?
So let's look at sectors in terms of, let's say, e-commerce is one of the key sectors where we are seeing a lot of investments which is happening, and where the cost of logistics is an important aspect. So I think there the last mile connectivity, the first mile connectivity will be an important aspect, and hence we need investments to come through in that particular area. The second where the impact can be really felt is the manufacturing sector. Right? At the end of the day, the whole 13% or the 14% that we are talking about is all linked to the manufacturing sector. And here, where the investments has to happen is in the ports, the rail part of it, the investments in the roads. All of this will then have an impact in the overall manufacturing part of it. See, the other one is also where the logistics cost is high, and where we really need to amp it up is the SME, or the the small and medium enterprises. Today, that's where the impact can be really felt. It's not the big corporates who are really facing the heat. The access to market for SMEs gets limited because of high logistics cost. If we're able to bring that down, we can really see a huge impetus in terms of employment, in terms of reach, in terms of getting the right price, and reaching to the audience that they have actually set out for. So let's take, for example, a production linked incentive. What has happened in the electronics part of it today? Significant amount of production is happening in India. The ability to export is also happening. And hence logistics plays an important part if we need to really capture this and move ahead. And then the need to invest in port and port related capacity, the access to ports, that means the connectivity part of it, road, rail, all of it be important. So sector by sector, there is a humongous opportunity for us to tap into, and the need for investments in the logistics is paramount.
So Jagan, in terms of sectors within infrastructure, whether it is railways, roadways, ports, waterways, aviation, where do you see the modal shares headed in the coming years, and which are the sectors that are likely to see the maximum investments and benefits of the policies?
You see the kind of drastic difference between the highway length which is there in US in comparison to India. So we still have a very long way to go as far as investments is concerned in this sector. And mind you, this is on the backdrop of the last 5 years where significant investments has already happened in the road sector. Right. So that's one part of it. The second is in terms of what has there in the ports part of it. So between 2023 to 2030, we are seeing a container traffic growth of about 6.5% to 7%, while the port capacity increases only at about 2.7 to 2.8%. Here again, this is on the backdrop of the higher capacity which is already present out in India. So even here, we need to see a lot more investments to happen. And I'll just quote an example how an investment can lead to a lot of benefits. If we take an example, in the same study that we talked about, the Logistics Performance Index of World Bank, where the turnaround time of JNPA has been mentioned, is at about 0.9 days. That's about 22 hours. This is significantly better than the other countries in the regions, even in comparison to a country like Singapore. which is higher than the ones at JNPA. This has happened because of a significant amount of investments over the last probably half a decade that JNPA has been making in that particular port, which has led to this. So, point being that the fruits of these investments will pan out over the next 4 to 5 years, but this is the starting point of it. Then we move into in terms of the modal share that you talked about, and which I mentioned at the start. Today, the railways modal share is at about 30% or even lesser. The need for it to go to 60% or at least 50% is very much essential, and this is also being talked about in the National Rail Plan, which had been prepared by the railways, and they have also kind of set across saying that in the next decade or a half, they need to move into that kind of an investment, to that kind of a modal share. Waterways is not talked about much, but that again for a coastal movement and to have a more efficient and a green way of moving of goods is an essential part of it, and a huge amount of opportunity also is there, even the waterways part of it. This is even just not only the EXIM part of it, but the coastal part as well.
So Jagan, you were talking about international benchmarks actually, and because we are looking to be amongst the global top 25, are there any particular country-specific things that one should be targeting, any international best practices that India needs to follow or target in the years ahead?
Yeah, so I'll kind of maybe give a few countries and kind of talk about where they are good. And each of them is kind of important. Let's say for Singapore, they have a metric is like an efficient customs procedure. They have an average customs clearance time of 10 to 15 minutes. This is something which is best in class, right? The kind of port facilities that they have, they are known to be one of the best transshipment ports amongst the world. So again, that leads to a lot of efficiency. Their whole tax treatment is quite efficient and helps them even in terms of bunkering, in terms of transshipment part of it. That's very good. If we now look at Germany, then the vast Autobahn network, thousands of kilometers, which is there, so it helps in the transportation network. So it is something that we could look at it. They also have good supply chain management, which we can kind of take note of. Moving on to Netherlands, they are having an efficient warehousing and distribution system. So just the line of thought being that individual value chain components in this whole logistics sector, I'm kind of calling out in each of those countries and how we could look at those countries and take that into picture. So in Netherlands, the whole warehousing and the distribution system is extremely there. Even from terms of the container port, the port of Rotterdam is one of the largest and the most efficient ports which are there. United States, we talked about the kind of highway network which is there, which is about close to over 6 million highways network which is there. The adoption of logistics technology is significantly high. The extensive last mile delivery networks and the e-commerce logistics part of it, in a way, China and US has really perfected that e-commerce part of it. Moving into China, the port of Shanghai itself handles about close to 40 million TEUs annually. To put it into context, the efficient ports in India are handling between 5 to 7 million TEUs in comparison to port of Shanghai, which is handling 40 million. So you can see the kind of headroom growth that we need to have. They have an extensive high-speed rail network, which we are just embarking upon, but they already have that in presence in China. In Japan, they are going one step further. They have extremely high on-time delivery, punctuality part of it is reliable and punctual. They are known for that, which is also an important part of the whole logistics. They are also very environmentally conscious in terms of their logistics. So the sustainability aspect kicks in when you compare it with Japan. Then if you look at UAE, is also Port of Jebel Ali is known for the cargo handling part of it, and they are able to have the whole logistics parks, free zones. This again ties up with the whole policy aspect that we talked about at the start, that they are able to facilitate this and have those people coming across. We have example of, let's say, Taiwan, which is very much known from the electronics part of it. They have a very efficient Taoyuan International Airport, hence that infrastructure is quite good. If it let's say Singapore, Switzerland, then the strategic location and efficient transit operations with the borders is extremely good. And so border management is also an important aspect when we look at the whole logistics part of it. So I think examples are galore. We can look at individual countries, take those inputs and see how we can improve our own logistics systems.